Hey everybody, Russ here at Shaper, and we just finished our session on raised letter signs.
Yep. Specifically, we're going to go through how to make this one. Not only how to cut both the positive parts on Workstation and the bigger part using a tape board, but of course, how to design the whole thing in Studio.
Yeah, we had a lot of fun. I think it's a really cool sign making technique. And if you like this video, please make sure to like and subscribe. And we love questions, so drop those in the comments below. We do these shows every other Thursday, so make sure you join us on our next show where we'll do live Q&A, giveaways, shop tours, and more.
Yep.
Hope to see you there.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to Shaper Sessions. My name is Jake.
And I'm Russ.
And today we are talking about
Signs. That was way better.
We're going to be doing this in honor of some new fonts released in Studio.
Yeah.
Some awesome fonts and just another way to make really cool, bold signs.
Another way to make cool, bold signs, because like what's the most basic way of making signs? I think engraving.
Yeah.
What's the more complicated way of making signs? Inlay. That's wild. You could pocket out a sign. That's a little more boring. I think this we haven't done before on the show, and it's really exciting. You get this depth of field here with the two different layers of sign, but you don't have to mess with any of the detail hassle that comes with fitting an inlay piece or making sure that all your corners are rounded just the right way. So, today, raised letter signs. As always, this is a live show, as you guys already know. Please ask all your questions about raised letter signs, everything Origin in the chat. We've got Ted in there answering most of the questions live, and then the really juicy ones he's going to send to us to answer at the end of the show.
Yep.
We also, at the end of every show, give stuff away. And to answer that giveaway, you're going to answer the poll question that pops up in the middle of the screen, in the middle of the show, about halfway through, during our break. We'll do our shop tour then. We've got a lot to cover. We're going to cut some things. We're going to design this in Studio, and then we're going to go ahead and cut the rest toward the end. So, hang on for the ride.
As always, we like to start off with a little bit of sawdust to get things going, so I'm going to cut one of these letters out.
Yeah, what do you have loaded up here?
I have a beautiful piece of walnut, half-inch thick walnut.
Jake, I'm going to interrupt you because that camera's pretty cattywampus there.
Which one?
We go back to the Origin cam. Look at that.
Oh, look at that.
Yeah, let's get a little... level that out. Nice.
I have a beautiful piece of walnut here on my workstation on the shelf that I've cut a couple letters out already. And I have on the screen my next letter, which is a G.
The letter G. And we've got two steps to each of these. How do we locate the parts on the sign? Well, it's going to be with these dowel holes. And we're just going to place these really easily in Studio when we get to that point. Whenever we cut a part with locating features and then an outside cut, we always cut the locating feature first, because what happens if you cut that outside cut and right at the end the part breaks free? Then you can't go back. So we're going to cut these locating features first and then cut the G free.
Yeah. All right. I'm going to go ahead and turn auto pass off, but helix on, because that's the perfect shape for a helix.
And we're just going to cut this. We'll walk through all the cut settings really slowly in the second half of the show when we cut even more letters. You know, we do this every time just so folks can filter in. Because it's a live show, we want to make sure that everybody gets a chance to get signed on. And what better way to get started than just watching some nice meditative helix holes. People who have been watching this show for a while know that helix is one of my favorite features on Origin. It lets you cut these holes exactly to the right diameter, exactly to the right depth, with a nice flat bottom to each of the holes, because obviously you're cutting them with a router bit to a very precise depth, just in one click of a button, because it's going to go ahead and helix all the way down to that. You don't need the right size drill. You can drill whatever weird size hole you want with helix. And it's nice and fast and accurate. It's going to place that hole exactly where you want every time, too. We're starting with that 1/4-inch bit because that's going to let us helix these holes really easily. We're working with 3/8 inch dowel for this one, just because it's what we had. You could use a 1/4-inch dowel. I think we even have some 3/16 dowel. That was a special order. But the 1/4-inch bit will let us cut those 3/8 inch holes really quickly. For the rest of this letter, though, Jake, you're swapping out to something else.
Going to the stock 8 Yeah, so my camera was in my way. There we go. That's better. Going back to the stock 1/8 inch bit, because there are some tighter corners on these letters that I want to be able to get into, and a smaller bit diameter lets me get closer into those crevices.
Yes, I see. So you're going to have much sharper signage here with this 1/8 inch bit. And this material is only a 1/2 inch thick, so we can use the 1/2 inch length on that 1/8 inch bit.
Perfect. Gonna bump this down and bump this up.
So what's that look like? 2 roughing passes and 1 finishing pass?
That's it.
Okay.
Here we go.
So Jake's got auto pass on here now for that letter G. And we're going to cut out the inside part of the G first, similarly to how we would cut out the inside of those holes. Auto pass is going to go ahead and do 2 depth passes and then 1 finishing pass, which is going to take that right out to the final dimension. Got 1 done, another 1 at the bottom here. And for anybody who's new to Origin, whether you're just watching the show for the first time to learn about it, or if you just picked one up and you're learning how to use the one that's sitting in your garage right now, the gist of it is that Jake is just driving Origin roughly along this path. He's keeping the dot, which represents the center of the spindle, anywhere inside that circle, which represents Origin's corrective range. And then as he travels along, Origin is going to keep him with micro corrections that are happening all the time in real time. Origin's going to keep him right exactly on that cut path. And there's very little programming to do for this. We designed this SVG file, which is the file type that Origin takes, in Shaper Studio. We'll show you guys how to do that next here, coming up in the show. But then on the tool itself, there's no crazy toolpath programming required. All you need to do is tell Origin what diameter bit you're using, how deep you want to cut, whether you want to cut to the inside, outside, or on the line of the template that you've made, and maybe some auxiliary information if you're getting advanced, like the speeds that you want to use. But usually we don't even mess with those. We just keep them at the default. Again, we're going to go more over all the settings that we're using in the second half of the show when we cut these letters piece by piece. But just to get your head wrapped around what you're seeing on the screen here, that's what's going on. Since Jake's using AutoPass, which is our extension for Origin that makes cutting long paths like this with multiple depths and a roughing offset easier, since Jake's using AutoPass, Origin just automatically stepped down from the first to the second pass. It's going to take him all the way down to that final depth. And then when he comes around to the end of this second pass, you will see Auto Pass bump Jake in very slightly from that roughing pass into his finishing pass. And we like doing a roughing offset and a finishing pass, a roughing pass and a finishing pass, because it gives you the smoothest results on that finishing pass. You're going to be taking off less material. He's just taking off whatever that roughing offset that he used was. And so it's a much lighter cut. And so you're going to have much better control of the tool for your best possible results. Remember, Origin's an augmented tool. It's part robot, part hand tool. So just like your plunge router, the better and more smoothly you drive it, the better results you'll get. Meditative to watch. Kind of fun. I wonder what that thing's called at the top of the G, Jake.
feels antenna-y.
It looks like a quail. You know
Yeah,
how they have
yeah,
those little
it does.
things? California state bird, in case you didn't know.
It dawned on me as I was cutting this letter. I think cutting text out like this might be one of the best things to practice if you're getting used to Origin.
Yeah?
Because there are so many different curves, there's tight corners that I'm using auto around, and it just gets you used to the way the tool wants to move.
Mm-hmm. It's not all straight lines.
Right.
And it's kind of inconsequential. It's not like the only joint on your bed frame that you've spent months laboring on. It's a letter, and you can download one from Studio, and you can practice it, and you can throw it away when you mess it up.
Yeah. For those that don't know, anytime you see that circle on my screen turn green, it's because I'm holding the green button down, and it is going into auto mode, which means it will travel along the cut path for as long as it can inside that corrective range. So I'm typically using that in sharp corners, anytime there's an immediate turnaround, or holes.
Yeah. Great. So that's one letter down. We've got 2 more to cut. We'll do those in the second half of the show with very detailed cut settings. But for now, we want to talk about Studio and how did we design this in the first place? Because here you can see the lettering, you can see the background, but you can't see any of the joinery that goes into this and some of the tricks that you need to know to get cutting on the right side of these letters. Because you'll notice that we're not cutting on the front of the letters here, we're cutting on the back, and the letter is mirrored in that case. So you got to be careful about that, and we'll show you how. But before we get started, we've got a really cool video announcement from Audrey, who's our designer on Studio, or product lead for Studio. She does everything for Studio, basically.
She does.
And she's going to walk you through some of the things that are new, because that's the whole reason we're doing the show. There's some stuff that's new. So let's roll the tape.
Let's do it.
Hi Sessions, I'm Audrey, the designer for Shaper Studio, and I'm so excited for all of you to get to see the new fonts that we just added. Russ is going to be going over that in a bit, but if you're curious about this release or what else is new to Studio, I just wanted to point out that all of our release notes are on our website. If you go to shapertools.com and then under the Learn tab and software releases, you'll get to this page where you can read any one of our 16 releases since launch. Studio is an actively developed product, and we make heavy use of feedback that you send in. So for this fonts release, for example, we collected feedback from sessions polls and from users who wrote in, and we will continue to do that. So if you have any thoughts as you're using Studio, good or bad, please send it in. Use this help menu in the bottom right to submit feedback, go through this flow, and it'll send us a message directly to our support team and our design team. So me, I'll get to see it. Also, shout out to all of you who have been sharing your designs on ShaperHub. I love going over here and seeing all the stuff that you all are working on. Just the other day, I found this MagSafe design that Lord Mars shared, and I was pretty excited because looking at it in Studio, I can see that all the depths are already set, so it's pretty much ready to go. I'm going to sync it to my files and go cut it out because actually I have a watch charger prototype I made a while back, but this was for when I used to wear Garmin watches and now I wear Apple watches. So I'm pretty excited to have a file already from Lord Mars. Thanks for sharing. Hope to see more designs from all of you, and I hope you have a great sessions.
Nice. Thanks Audrey.
I also really commend you on the video style. I really like how it zooms in. I just think that's really cool.
Very classy. So before we get started on the design, I wanted to show you guys these release notes that Audrey mentioned because I think they're really cool. So I have them pulled up on my computer here. We're going to be doing a lot of computer stuff today, but just for the first 20 minutes here. So if you go to shapertools.com/releases, you can see all the release notes for Origin, Studio, Trace, and our Fusion export extension. What happened recently in Studio? On April 8th, we got new fonts, 11 new fonts. We've got a bunch of single line fonts. We've got a really cool stencil font, some script, a really bold one, an arts and craftsy kind of font like Daryl Peart you could imagine using. And then we fixed some small things. We're always fixing things here and there. If you go back a little farther, on the last show we talked about shortcuts, which is really cool. A lot of different shortcuts for all the different things that you might want to do with Studio, a lot of actions. We've got Duplicate in Place that came out in February. Anyway, I'll let you guys scroll farther back on this, but it's really cool to see every little thing that we've updated and fixed and changed and improved for Studio, Origin, Trace, etc. And here is what we're working on. This is the sign. So you can see what's going to happen. We've got a background. We've got some letters. Jake cut the UST before the show. We just cut the G. We've got the A and the U to do, and a whole bunch of holes. And you can see how the joinery works for this thing now. It's just a bunch of dowels in the back there. But if you don't have a really precise way to line up the dowels on your letters and the dowels on the back of your block, then you're just signing yourself up for heartache on this one. And Studio makes it really easy to get a file that matches perfectly between the letters with the dowel holes and this background with the dowel holes, and we're going to zip it all out with CNC with Origin. That was a mouthful. Should I just start drawing this thing?
Get into it.
Let's just get into it. Okay, we're going to go step by step through this. First step always is to make a new design. And I named the last one August sign, so I'm going to call this one Sessions sign. Even though it's exactly going to be the same thing, I just want to make sure that I differentiate between the two. The very first thing I want to add is the font. I think finding the right letter height for the font is the best way to arrive at the shape of the sign. I'm not going to draw the background first and make the font match the background. I want to work with the font and what it naturally wants to do. So I'll type in August here. Place that. We can recenter with the zoom to selection button up here. And you can see here's our font picker menu. We've got all different new settings, and the brand new fonts are going to have this nice blue dot next to it. So let's scroll down top to bottom and look at these. We've got, this one looks kind of Gothic or Old English in a way. This is the one that we're going to use. You already saw this one. We'll come back to it. We had a lot of requests for this very easy to read sans serif Comic Sans-ish font. We've got a new script, which I love. Beautiful. Dyer Arts and Crafts. This is that Arts and Crafts green and green style font, and I think this is cool as heck. Like,
super
label
cool.
everything in your woodshop with this. A really classy serif font here. This one's wild. This is super bold.
Nice.
We've got a script single line font, which is no small feat. So thanks for Audrey for developing this specifically. She did this herself. Very impressive. And I think we've got a couple more. Really kind of hippy dippy font here.
There you go.
You know, this is on the side of the Mystery Mobile.
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
Another single line font. And, okay, this one's great. Stencil font. So if you need to label your crates to ship your furniture across the country, you're going to use this stencil font. But we already know what we want because I scrolled through these before the show. We're going to use this one. I think this is great for a kid's room. Fun, playful font, but without being like childish.
Yeah,
you know?
it's soft but classy.
Yeah, it's soft but classy. And we decided before the show that we want these letters to be 6 inches high. That makes the width of the letters here 24.75-ish inches. Pretty close to right on the nose there. And, you know, if you wanted to change the aspect ratio of this, if you wanted to make things narrower or taller or wider or something, all you need to do is hit the unlink button on this, and you can change the width and the height independently of each other. So let's say I want to make this wider and bolder. I could make this 30 inches wide. And it just spreads that out, makes it longer. I'm going to undo that, though, because I want to stick with this 24.75 dimension. I think that looks pretty natural. We also want a background for this, just to get kind of an idea of what size sign it's going to go on. I don't know if we trimmed this basswood to size before the show, did we? Yeah, you did. Okay, I think this is, what did we say, 26 inches wide by 8 inches tall.
Yeah.
That looks pretty good.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so let's keep that. And then here's the fun part. We just need to make a bunch of circles, and these are going to be our dowel holes. What I'm thinking about when I do this is I want to make sure that all the parts are located and that any little tabby extensions like the quail of the G, I'm just going to call it the quail of the G, are supported so that they don't break off. So we're going to put a dowel hole up there. I'm going to make a shape. It's going to be a circle. I'm using a 0.375 inch dowel. You could make this a 0.375 inch hole. It's likely that you're going to need to use an offset to tune that fit. In the design for this show, I know these are snug, so I actually made them a 0.377 inch hole. And you still needed to use an offset on this, didn't you, Jake? Just 1/1000 of an inch?
Just so we could get it apart if we needed to, but
yeah, so
it would have fit.
Really what I would do is I'll make this 0.379.
There you go.
And then when I do this later, I'm not going to need any offset at all. Save that. I'm going to zoom in a little bit just to make it easier to copy this and move it. And let's just put one right there. Now this is where those shortcuts come in handy. Control D is your duplicate. Oop, I just zoomed the touchpad a little bit much there. A little easier with a mouse. So we're just going to do a bunch of Control D. You can't see me clicking on it here. And you know what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn that snapping off because I want to be able to put these wherever I want them. Snap to grid is right here in this design menu drop down. You can also use smart alignment, which helps individual shapes snap to their the boundaries of each other. But I just want everything to be freeform here. Control D. If you're using a phone or don't have keyboard shortcuts or just don't want to use keyboard shortcuts, we've got this duplicate in place and duplicate button down here at the bottom. But because it's so much faster, I'm a Control D guy today. Control D. Control D. This might feel a little tedious for live TV, Jake. Is there a joke in here somewhere?
When I try to think of jokes, they never come to me.
Yeah, me either.
Forget every joke I've ever learned.
We're getting close to the end here. Now, one thing that's important, because you might notice that I'm just placing these totally freehand, is that we pre-set up some files for this, and we're going to stick with the files that we set up before the show, because those have the willy-nilly dowel hole placement that I made earlier this afternoon. And this willy-nilly dowel hole placement is going to be for a different sign. It's also important to note that we've got two different U's here, and although the dowel placement looks similar, they are not identical, so we're going to end up with two different U files in this. But, okay, so this is the gist of it. What we need now is to break out each of these individual letters, or at least that's what I would recommend, because this is wider than the space that's available on Workstation. What we're going to do is break this down into smaller pieces so it's easier to place. The other thing you could do is you could just work on this huge piece of walnut here if you had, a tape board, for example, set out for yourself.
Right.
But we're doing this on Workstation today. So what am I going to do to break out each individual letter? I'm going to shapeshift these apart, and I'm going to save all the letters into duplicate files in Studio. So I'm going to have a file for the letter A, and the U, and the G, and the U, number 2, and the S, and the T. There's 2 U's, don't forget that. Cool, so let's do that. Session sign, I'm going to just take this and duplicate now. Let's call this first one session sign A. Okay, so we just duplicated that. If I open recent here, you can see I've got 2 different files now. I've got the original session sign, and I've got session sign letter A. This is the one that I'm working in. So what I can do is I can click, hold, and drag to select a bunch of stuff. But it actually looks like I'm getting ahead of myself. This word is all one shape, so I actually need to shape shift out just the A on this. I'm taking just the A. Make shape. And I didn't save the rest of the shapes, so they're just gone now, which is fine. I'm just doing the A here. Click, hold, and drag to get rid of all the rest of this other stuff. And then I can hit Control A to select all and drag this just back toward the middle. Just because I like it to be centered. Not because it matters, but just because I like it to be centered. Okay, now what are we going to do with this letter? We need to plan this out. We're going to go into plan mode. We have 4 different shapes. The A and the 3 holes. The A, we want to be cut outside the line. And you've got 0.5 inch material, so let's say we want this to cut to 0.52 inches deep. The holes, we can hit Shift Select to click all 3 of them. We want these to be inside cuts. We want these to go to 0.4 inches deep. Okay. Double check that. Now, there's one thing still wrong with this. We're cutting the back side of this, and I want to make sure that I lock in that backside cut as soon as possible. I don't want to have to remember to flip this on Origin. You can flip this stuff in Studio, so I'm going to select all, and that's what this button is down here, mirror horizontal. It's going to take all of these and flip them. So now we're cutting the dowels in this letter from the backside. There it is. All right, let's do another one. Let's get a little more practice in.
Let's do it.
Jake, you can cut me off whenever this starts to feel tedious, but I think we should do at least one more.
Yeah, I think so too.
Because we're going to go back into the original sign. We're going to open recent. We're going to go into, and you can see this is updated now. We're going to go into session sign, back to our original. Let's duplicate this again. And we're going to call this session side U1.
Nice.
Because we've got 2. Rename. Perfect. Now we're going to do the same thing again. Let's shape shift out that first letter U, make shape, and we don't need to keep the rest of the existing shapes. We just want the U. Okay. Now we can drag to select and get rid of these things. We can drag to select and get rid of these things. We can Control A to select all, bring this toward the middle. While I'm here, I'm going to flip it horizontally. And now we can go into plan mode. Again, the U is going to be an outside cut to 0.52 inches deep. And shift click selects multiple. These will be an inside cut at 0.4 inches deep. 0.4. There we go. What do you think, Jake? Should I do a third one?
Nah.
Nah?
I think we got it.
You think we got it? Okay. So then let's move on to the background here, because that's important. We have this rectangular block that needs a bunch of holes cut in it, and those are going to be cut facing forward. So session sign, let's open that again. For the block, we're not cutting any of the letters out of that. We're just cutting all these holes, and we're looking at this block facing forward, so this is actually the correct side. What I can do now is duplicate this again. I'm going to call this one session sign background. And on this one, I can just get rid of all the letters. I can select all, and I'm going to turn all of these holes and the outer perimeter, just because I have it selected, into an inside cut. These are going to be 0.4 inches deep also. And because I don't actually need this outside cut, I'll just turn this into a guide. So when I review that, you can see we've got all these holes. And these will be cleared out fully when we use a 1/4 inch bit. We could actually preview that. Let's set this bit diameter to a 1/4 inch here. So when we review that, we've got all the holes, A, U, G, U, S, T. And that's just the way that I like to do it. There are a bunch of ways to do it. If you're better at keeping track of these things in your head, you could keep all the parts in one file, or if you had just one big piece of walnut that you were using with a tape board and you could cut all the letters at once, you could keep it all one file. But I like just breaking them apart into different things so that I know that it's ready when I need it.
Yeah. Or if you're cutting them out of 6 different species of wood.
Yeah, totally. That would be really fun.
That'd be cool.
I think that's where we want to pause.
Yeah, let's take
now.
a break.
A little heady.
A little heady studio. But we're going to go ahead and open up that poll.
Yeah, that does mean that it's time for the giveaway.
Yeah. All right, so to be a part of that giveaway at the end of the show, we're going to ask that you answer this poll question. The question of the day is, what other digital fabrication tools do you use with Studio?
Yeah, and that's a fun one because we talk about Origin primarily, obviously, but you also could use Studio with a laser cutter or with a vinyl cutter to plan your cuts for a vinyl cutter or for a plasma CNC machine. That would be crazy. We did some work with a plasma cutter with Trace when it came out, which was a lot of fun.
That's right.
All of these tools take SVG files. Yeah. And so do you use Studio with any of these other tools? And if so, which ones? We'd love to hear about it.
This week's shop tour comes from Mr. Tom Brown. But I just realized I jumped right over our announcement, so I'm sorry.
We can do it. We can skip it. It's a small announcement.
Yeah.
We mentioned this on the last show. We're going to be at Fine Woodworking New England, May 9th and 10th, I think that is. And while I've got that on the brain, I want to remind you guys that if you're wondering if there's a Shaper event near you, you can always go to shapertools.com/find us. And so you can see all of our events this year. Some of these, unfortunately, you've already missed. TCEA, but this one's coming up. AWFS, huge trade show in Las Vegas. That one's a lot of fun. Fine Woodworking Live coming up here May 9th and 10th. There's that event website. We've got a bunch of events on here, and if you're curious where to find an Origin near you to try a demo, we got a lot of dealers. I got to scroll all the way to the top. Here's our map of Origins that you can try out in person, do a demo. So check that out, shapertools.com/find us, and Fine Woodworking New England, May 9th and 10th.
Nice.
All right, let's roll that shop tour.
Let's do it.
This one's fun.
Okay, so here's my before picture of my shop. I just pulled the car out of the garage. Everything I have has to tuck away at night for when we pull the car in. Okay, so here's my most common configuration of my shop. A lathe I've never used yet, just acquired last year. Brand new jet bandsaw. I've cut one board with it so far. All my wood storage over here. Rolling wood rack for sheet goods and longer stuff. I'm using just about every part of this 2-car garage with the inset and back for storage of materials and tools. Come around this way and show you my cubby wall that I'm working on. Some of the sections are actually organized, some of it of course still waiting. My measuring tool drawers, vertical drawers that I made, stole the idea off of YouTube. But I got tired of sifting through drawers for measuring tools. Back here I'm using this little space for vertical stuff. All my parallel clamps are going to go on a rack up on that bar there. This is my first cleat wall inspired by Shaper Origin, guys. My very first Origin project that I made, and so far that's worked out for me pretty good. People really want to compensate me for making them something, I will let them. My other cleat wall that right now is working good for hose storage and PPE. Wall mounted dust collector, mostly used for the thickness planer here, and sometimes for the router table when I don't have it buried in materials. Have my little pneumatic station here and my auxiliary workbench for the nail guns. My latest acquisition is this Capex I got off a marketplace for $1,000. Some rich guy was tired of the hobby and changing hobbies, and it's better than new. He made a couple of improvements to it. On my pegboard wall, my rolling dust collection, both my extractor that I use for when I'm using my Origin and my Capex, the rolling dust collector for the bandsaw and the table saw. All my benches are on Rockler casters. I have one set of wheels and a set of bases on all my workbenches, so I can reconfigure my shop into anything I need to. Line them all up to work on 30-foot stock if I ever have to. And that's my old contractor table saw. Bought it on sale for $200, made the bench for it, and it's been a workhorse. Someday I'll get a real saw. And then finally my MFT 1080 set up to make a shamrock with my granddaughter here in a little bit. I got 2 places in my shop that I can put my workstation and work on Origin. And I've got some larger tape boards that I use. So that's my shop.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for sending it to us, Tom.
Yeah, I want to see that shamrock that your granddaughter made. That'd be
too.
cool. I love those vertical sliding drawers.
Yeah.
Because we've got the cleat wall here, and I feel like the cleat wall needs more density sometimes. You know, I like the cleats,
Right.
but sometimes I wish things were a little tighter. Vertical drawers would help with that.
I feel that.
Yeah. So, one more project for the Shaper HQ shop to-do list. All right. One more thing. I almost forgot. We've got a project. This is okay.
Oh, I love it.
We got this. Ted sent this to me today. Dale sent this to Ted, and Ted sent this to me. Look at this Shaper-made sign. This is a Shaper-made sign. I see your face, Jake. Can we cut to Jake's face
Is
here
this
for a second?
Like just a really incredible paint technique?
No, it's copper. Okay, back to the sign. Yeah, so this is cut out of a 12 by 6 by however long old beam, reclaimed beam, with Origin, and then after this was all pocketed out, Dale cut a copper, like, I don't know, surface treatment, flashing, something for this, copper facade for the sign, and then patinaed it.
That is too cool.
Yeah, it's beautiful. So, hat tip to Dale.
Nice.
Thanks for sharing. I love that. That's so cool.
That's really cool.
We got to work with more copper, I think, seeing
We
that.
do. I feel like we gravitate towards brass, but copper is fantastic.
Yeah. Okay, back to the show. We've got all this stuff designed.
do.
We have 2 more letters to cut, and then we've got a bunch of holes to cut in the background. So where are we at on Origin here?
I just swapped back to my 1/4-inch cutter because I'm going to start with those holes in the middle. I want to get all the detail inside the letter done before I cut the outside of the letter because it's more likely, well, if it's going to cut loose, that's going to happen most likely when I'm cutting the outside. So I want to get the inside done first.
Okay.
I am going to first.
And you could place both of the letters at the same time now so that we can be more efficient with doing the holes and then doing the outsides.
Exactly.
Yeah, cool.
So I have to think backwards. I need a U and I need an A.
Not just any U. You need U number 1.
New number 1.
U number 1, because I hope you did U number 2. We'll find out if it doesn't fit, because you did the UST before.
That's true. I'm lining everything up from the bottom because there's some particularly beautiful grain that I'm trying to capture in this.
Mm-hmm. And we're just lining up the bottoms of all the letters for the signage stuff. You don't strictly need a grid. You don't need to be super precise with everything, but with the lettering, it can help your grain matching for sure.
Scooch that over. See, my grid is still at a 1/2-inch increment, which is the default. But instead of changing that to an 1/8 of an inch or a 1/4 inch, I just tell it to scoot over 0.75, a 1/4 of an inch instead. Or, there we go. All right. I can go ahead and turn off auto pass for just the holes, but turn on helix. All of these are going to be insides to 0.4 inches deep with I know ahead of time I can actually add a 1/1000th of an inch offset just to make that dowel fit a little bit better. 1/4 inch bit, Z-touch, and I bumped up my auto speed.
Mm-hmm.
Because I know I can stay still and support origin while it helixes down to this cut. So
Yeah.
this is a good time to bump up your auto speed. Remember to turn it back down after the fact, though.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, let's go get after it.
Mm-hmm. All right, bunch of helixes. Really all you need to do at this point is press that green button and hang on. Origin does the rest. And you can crank that auto speed as fast as you want to go, as long as you can still maintain control of the tool. This is another one of those things. It's part robot, part CNC machine, part hand tool. And so it does matter how much control you can keep over the tool. Sneak up on it. We know that we can really crank that auto speed and feel pretty comfortable here at the Shaper Shop. We always recommend, though, that you ease into it.
All right. Done with that, so I'm swapping back to my 1/8 inch.
Mm-hmm. Again, that 1/8 inch bit is going to get the tight corner detail while being long enough to cut through the thickness of the wood that we're using, which is about a 1/2 inch thick. And it's a trade-off. If you wanted sharper corner detail, you would want a smaller router bit, but then you would need to make this wood thinner, your letter material thinner, to account for that. Because what can you get a 1/16 inch bit in? You know, an 1/8 inch long, 1/4 inch long.
And
1/4
the
inch
longer
long.
they are, the more delicate they are.
Yeah, 1/4 inch long.
Tell Origin that I have an 1/8 inch bit and Z-touch.
Yeah, let's go through all these settings step by step here. It's pretty lightweight for this one, but we like to go top to bottom. We just did the depth, or not the depth, with the diameter and the Z-touch. The next one, starting from the top down, is that depth. So when we click on that, we see I've got an encoded depth here from the studio design, which is 0.52 inches. I already thought about how deep we want to cut this. It's a little bit thicker than the material so that it breaks through. So we got that set. We want to keep that as an outside cut. We don't need any offset on this. They're just letters that are being applied to the surface, so there's no reason to fine-tune the fit for anything. Again, we already checked the bit diameter and the Z-touch. Now, here's one, speeds. You cranked that auto speed back up. Have we turned it back down yet?
There we go.
Nice. That's the first step, and now we also want to check that auto pass stuff.
That feels like too many passes for me. I'm going to bring that down so that I'm doing 2 depth passes and a finish pass. And because I'm going a little deeper with an 1/8 inch bit, I'm going to bump up my roughing pass to something like 0.02.
Great.
Ready, set?
Mm-hmm. Ready, set. Now, those auto pass settings, Jake's going down a little over a 1/4 inch at a time with this 1/8 inch bit, and that's because he's got a lot of practice. Usually when we recommend people just starting out with Origin what depth to cut per pass, up to about 8 millimeters or so, we say you want to take maybe 1 bit diameter depth per pass. So with an 1/8 inch bit, that's going to be an 1/8 inch depth per pass. But Jake's got plenty of practice, so he's going to bump that up to double that. That's a 1/4 inch depth per pass. And there's no limit, again, as long as you feel like you've got good, secure control of the tool and you're making nice, smooth cuts. you could go even deeper than that. It also depends on the material. This is a hardwood. We're cutting both along and across the grain. Cutting across the grain can be difficult. I know that we've got a nice sharp router bit here. When your router bit is dull, you might feel a lot more resistance, and that might impact your cut settings. There's a lot that goes into it. But the rule of thumb, if you're just starting out, should be about 1 bit diameter per pass in depth, up to 8 millimeters. When you get beyond that, I would recommend actually bringing that depth per pass down, because then you're removing a whole heck of a lot of material. Imagine taking a pass with a 16 millimeter bit that we sell that deep. That would be a pretty hefty cut. Reminder to ask questions in the chat. I think we've got 4 or 5 questions for demos so far. So keep sending them in, and Ted's going to send those to us. Just like it was important to do the helix holes first, it is again important to do the center of the letter A first before anything happens to break free. Because you want the center of the A in the middle of the A, or at least to line up with the rest of the font. And then what Jake's doing right now is just breaking that little piece free, because it can be really easy for that stuff to get jammed. Just toss it aside. And once again, we're going to auto pass down through the outside passes of this letter A. 1/4 inch depth per pass with a small 0.02 inch roughing offset. 2 passes on the depth to bring it down to 0.52 inches. And then we're going to take off that roughing offset and bring it down exactly to that final pass. Down on that second depth pass now. Another cool thing about AutoPass is that it remembers how deep you've cut. And so if you happen to go outside the line, you go outside of Origin's corrective range and you end up retracting, AutoPass will let you pick back up right where you left off, even at that same depth. And everyone who owns Origin has a free trial of AutoPass on their machine. I think it's 2 weeks long. And if you've got a project that has a lot of deep lettering like this, or a lot of mortise and tenons, definitely recommend giving that free trial a spin. I don't want to tell you to save it forever, but it does make a big difference if you use it for something where it really matters instead of trying it on something where it doesn't make much of a difference. I think these letters are a really good example of a great AutoPass project. Mortise and tenons are an example of a great AutoPass project. But if you're doing something with just a bunch of helixable holes, AutoPass isn't going to change anything for you. So make sure that it's the right project. This is an example of a good one. Very nice.
All right. Now
That
my
looks
favorite
great.
part.
What, peeling it up?
Prying things off, yeah.
Oh yeah, so you can see just the letters. I do like that when you're done and you can see just the letters left. Mm-hmm.
Nice.
That's fun.
Took some MDF with it. It's good tape. Notice how for the letters that I really care about, I use that flexible, thin, sharp scraper to wiggle my way under and not damage the underside.
Mm-hmm. Which is really the front.
Which is the face.
Which is really the front.
This stuff's pretty thick, so I'm not really too worried about cracking it. But when we're doing inlays that are 1/8 inch material, especially exotic species that have really brittle grain, you got to be real ginger with it.
Yeah, why is it the exotic species that always have the brittle grain, Jake?
I don't know, but like Wenge and stuff loves to just crack right down the middle.
That's fun. Cool. All right, so we have all the letters now. We do still need that background. And I think we're going to set up a tape board for this, right, Jake?
Yeah, for this kind of thing, because it's quite a bit wider than Workstation. It's easier just to mill up 2 boards at the same thickness.
And we're not even going all the way through this. We're just going, again, 0.4 inches deep on all of these helixed holes. So we don't even need a spoil board underneath. We're just going to set 2 pieces up right on the MFT here, and we'll be all set. I love that little 3D printed clamp holder on the side there. I wish it had more than 3 holes.
Yeah.
I wonder why it only has 3. Do you remember where you got that? It was at a trade show. Somebody
His
makes
business.
the files.
I want to say it's Forged 3D, but
Cool.
his card is on my desk.
Yeah, the ecosystem of 3D printed Festool parts out there is pretty cool. I was at a trade show with our colleague Ben, and he 3D printed a wheel for his Festool dust collector because he dropped it or something and the wheel broke. And it was going to be a little while for the shipping. So he just 3D printed one because they provide the files for that.
That's super
How cool is that? Yeah.
All right. Got my basswood. Got a piece of ash that is the same thickness.
And no reason really for the basswood on this. It's just the wood that we had that was nice and big, good contrast, relatively cheap, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, great.
But soft. I mean, you look at it wrong and it's gonna ding. Most important aspect of using a tape board is that they don't move. The 2 things don't move relative to each other.
So the tapes are very helpful for that.
And we're not putting tape on our workbench. We're putting it right here. And a little bit on here. So I want to make sure that when I'm cutting the top holes, I can still see about 2 rows of tape up in front of me. So that's how I'm kind of planning out where I'm going to stick my basswood down.
That looks like a pretty good placement right
About
there.
2 inches, yeah.
And that side's got a big knot on it, so we're going to make that the back.
Well, you know what we should do? Put some keyholes in the back.
It's already 4:55.
Not today.
Not today. Look at our what was that show, Jake? Keyhole slots and plates. Yeah, keyhole slots and plates. We made keyholes 2 ways. We used the T-slot bit that we sell on our website to make a keyhole, literally in the wood of the project that we were working on, and then that was a really good brass cutting show because we used the 1/8 inch O-flute bit to make a keyhole plate out of brass. Design that in studio, cut it with Origin in brass. So if you want to make some keyholes, check that out. Yeah, super important to get those 2 rows of tape right at the top of this because Jake demonstrated the placement of Origin. When you're all the way forward on that basswood, you're going to still want to be able to see 2 rows of tape. Another one on there, and then, yeah, maybe another row on the basswood just for safety's sake. I think that's plenty.
I think so too. Start off with a fresh scan. While that's piecing those together, I'm going to swap back to my 1/4 inch bit. And I think because we have so many holes, I'm going to go even faster than 20 inches per minute.
Nice. And because this is just a sign and it doesn't have to be super precise, we can use this 1/4" bit to do our rectangle probe also, because we're going to probe the rectangle of this piece to get that exact center. Make sure everything's nice and square, get the center of the material to drop our design onto.
All right, so while we're in that design mode, not grid, they're under create, probe rectangle. Very similar to a grid, we're just going to follow along with the screen. Start off with making sure that it knows I have a 1/4" bit in there. 1, 2, 3. You can actually just lift the tool. 4 around the back side. And 5 to bring it home. I love that.
Mm-hmm.
Perfectly square, dead center.
What's not to love?
Now you can bring in our background.
Mm-hmm. And this one is facing the correct way because we didn't change anything in Studio. We're just using that same dowel layout.
And drop it at 0, 0.
Okay, so into the cut settings now. Working from top to bottom. Again, we've got that 0.4" depth on all of these. That's the same encoded depth for the dowels from the letters. That's perfect. We are going to turn autopass off on this because that's what you need to do to enable helix mode. Now, what's next, Jake?
Got an inside cut.
Perfect. All of these are going to be inside cuts.
Go ahead
You
and
did
give
say
that
that you wanted a small offset on these.
just a little. 1/4" bit.
Mm-hmm.
Always a good idea to Z-touch.
Perfect.
And speeds.
You're going to juice these speeds.
Let's see what 25 feels like. I might make a game time decision to go higher.
Okay, because we have something like 20, 25 holes to cut here.
I'm still running my spindle speed at speed 5.
Mm-hmm.
No need to crank that.
Mm-hmm.
Let's go.
Okay. Should start a stopwatch for this, see how long it takes, because there is no way that you can cut this anywhere near this fast on a drill press. And I bet you could turn that up, Jake. I think you could turn up the plunge speed too on that, just to really get it down in there. Yeah, nice. So just hitting all the holes on this. Find each hole, press the green button, wait till it retracts. Find the next hole, press the green button, wait till it retracts. The blue here that's coming up as Jake cuts everything is called your cut history. It's just telling you what you've cut before, so as long as you see a hole that's filled in with blue, it means that it's been cut. If you wanted to start again, there is a button to erase that cut history, but I try to keep it as long as possible just to remind myself what I've already done. There's not much to narrate on this. Helix is really doing all the work. As long as you're holding origin still, there's no risk that it's going to go outside the lines. And Helix is going to work with any toolpath that fits completely inside Origin's corrective range. So if you're cutting some holes and they don't appear to be helixable, try using a larger router bit, because that larger router bit is going to bring the center of the spindle farther in toward the middle of the hole. It's going to bring that toolpath in toward the middle of the hole, and so it's going to make it more likely that that fits inside that corrective range to be able to be helixed. Or at least halfway now. Is that it? Looks like we got everything. We got one more hiding out up here. Oh yeah, this is the top of the G, the quail of the G. Wow. Pretty cool.
Nice.
Ian said he was running a timer on this one. Where did we end up? We got him on the Secret Service mics.
Okay.
3 minutes, 13 seconds.
You know, if you got a lot of holes to helix, good podcast on your headphones.
How many holes are you helixing, man?
Never know.
But, I mean, definitely faster and more accurate than the drill press, I would say.
If you got a 32 millimeter hole system on a cabinet or something.
Oh, yeah. Let it rip. Okay, so it's time to hammer it together, I guess.
It is.
Yeah, time to hammer it together. Or maybe it's going to be a nice press fit together. The sign's a sign I had to really wail on because I didn't do the offsets on that one. This one was pretty tight, but I think you had the offsets tuned on this, so it should be a nice, easy fit. Oh yeah, we need to pry that up.
Another fun tip. If you have delicate wood that you don't want to damage, but you need a little more oomph, slip that under there, and then use the big guy under that.
Mm-hmm.
And it won't damage your very sensitive basswood.
Great tip. Okay, got a jumble of letters here. Got two U's. That's going to be the hardest one to figure out. I forget which one's which now.
Uh-oh.
Oops. Now we'll find out. Okay. Should I start?
I'll help.
Whoever
I'll help
doesn't
put pegs in.
Whoever doesn't cut does the pegs. Okay. Yeah, these should just press right in. I might not even need the mallet. Oh yeah, that feels good. Using the T-wrench. That's funny. You're much less likely to hurt your fingers that way. Ha! Can balance these right on top and get them in with one well-placed hit.
Feels like the game Icebreaker.
Which one was that? Is that the one where you put ice cubes on a thin piece of tissue paper? No, that's the one where you have that's like the one where you have the grid of plastic ice cubes and you have to hit them out.
Exactly.
Oh, I remember that. That was fun.
All those are going to need a good whack.
Okay. They'll go in when we get the letters on. Made a couple extra of these. Okay, now, before we put these letters on all the way, I wanted to show you guys a fun tip. Because we seated the letters for the sign, all the way down, but you may have seen in our email that we sent out before the show that they were offset just a little bit, and I think that's a lot of fun.
A little shadow line.
Yeah, a little shadow line. So, here's what I've got to do that. I've got 2 1/8-inch shims of cherry here, and I'll just show you how I would do this on the letter A. I've got these 2 shims down. I'm going to put the letter A on top of that. Press that down. Ideally, you would want to have some glue or something in there, you know? But now you can pull your shims away. And voila, got a nice little shadow line on that guy. I think that's a lot of fun. And you would want to cut your dowels a little bit longer for that. These dowels are on the shorter side, so we're just going to seat everything home. Oh yeah, and that feels really good. So, is this it? Yeah, that's the one right there. Here, I'm going to give you a couple of letters.
Nice.
Feels really good.
Oh my gosh. Perfection.
The G's got 5, so that one's a little.
It's got a lot of tolerances
It's
coming together.
a little tighter. August.
So cool.
Did we say what this is for?
No, we didn't.
Our buddy Noah is having a baby.
Oh, this darker grain choice was making me really happy.
Yeah, so put this up in August's room.
Yeah.
Be cute. Little reminder of us. Great. Well, there we go. That's raised letter signage. You might want to do a couple things to this. You might want to round over the edges a little bit. Maybe you want to put some copper on top. I thought that was so cool.
Yeah.
The world's your oyster.
Until next time, have a wonderful rest of your evening.
See ya.